Priscilla.
What's up, guys? I'm Brittany.
And I'm Jahari, and welcome to our podcast, The Ninth Semester.
Welcome to episode 4. And then they were roommates. Today, we're talking about transitioning from having friends and classmates around you 24/7 for spontaneous activities to dealing with your new normal, hanging out with 30 and 40-year-olds in cubicles and meeting calls.
Yeah, so kind of jumping right in, why this topic even came about this week. Um, I remember I was just scrolling through Instagram and kind of ran into this article that was in the New York Times opinion. It was titled, "My college roommates are now half a world away. What does that mean for our friendship?" And this was by Shani Wong. And yeah, it was kind of talking about this idea of sustained proximity that you have in college. Having like a walkable community, having people around you that you can do spontaneous things, like Priscilla said, uh, just whenever you wanted to. And yeah, it was making me think and reflect on how now that I'm in the corporate world with, you know, upwards to 60-year-olds, it's definitely a new normal and a different thing that you have to kind of overcome. So yeah, I guess to just kind of start off the conversation, how was that transition for you guys once you graduated and weren't in dorm rooms and stuff like that anymore?
Jerry, you want to go first?
I was hoping you'd go first.
Well, I sure will, friend, just because you said that. I think the transition is a little bit easier while you're not doing something directly after college. Obviously, to your point, Brittany, talking about kind of the walkable aspect of being in a physical community with a whole bunch of your peers, you lose that right when you come out of, or right when you graduate college. For me, it was a little bit not a huge um, unnormal, or I guess a huge difference to me, mainly due to the fact that I stayed in Memphis after graduation, so which was the college town that we went to, for audience reminder. And so I was around pretty much the same people that I would typically see outside of my friends, such as you guys who went back to their hometowns or went back to their local regions for opportunities. And so I think in one aspect, it wasn't a huge deal for me because I was still in the college town. I still would go to campus because I would have to pick stuff up. I would see people, events would still happen. And so it wasn't a huge transition then. Now, I really started to notice it when I started my new role in a new city, that once you have a job, really corporate life isn't really engineered for you to have a social life out of a job. I mean, like, you go work 40 hours a week, you get home. If you're someone like me where you don't really do anything after work because you have like a pretty strict 9 to 5 where that's the standard. I don't usually do anything after work. If anything, I might go run and grab groceries or run some quick errands. And so I really don't think of the social aspect of things. And it's really thanks to having friends like you guys, having calls, texts, and stuff. That's pretty much the only thing keeping me engaged and changing up my schedule. Because otherwise, it would be a pretty simple. I go to work, come back home, maybe run a couple errands for an hour if I'm lucky, and then I'm showering, going to sleep, and repeating the day. And then weekends for me are pretty quiet. I don't usually do too much on weekends. So all that to say, the transition was not as difficult for me when I was in the college town back in Memphis for those 3 months after graduation. But when I started a job, a 40-hour job, and moved to an entirely new city, I really started to notice it then.
So I so I think for me, right, my situation is a little different. Okay, so I knew a couple months before I graduated that I was definitely going to move back to DC, my hometown. And what I also knew was that there was a strong contingent of people from previous chapters of my life, as well as like college, who were going to move as well. And so to me, I felt like I already kind of had, being from here, having family that lives here, having an existing group of friends who are going to move back after they graduated, right? Um, was kind of overwhelming to me, right? Because I think when people move to your city, much more than when y'all know the situation where people come to your city and they're like, I'm in your city, and
Yeah,
expect
what do
you to
you
kind of,
what do you have to do? Like,
right,
Yeah,
right.
nobody's ever said that about me, my town.
Well,
But anyway,
I, I don't
the
want to say
middle of
anything
nowhere?
shady. We love
Oh,
Pine Bluff. We love Um, I yeah, I felt like it was kind of going to be that situation, right? Where it was like, okay, this is the first time I'm back with my family in a couple years, right? After I graduated, right? So everybody wants to come out the woodworks, be like, "Oh my God, what are you doing next?" And "Oh my God, I got to hear all about the experience. How was your graduation?"
right.
Right? And all that bullshit that they want to do. Then you have um right the existing friend group, and so now we're all trying to spend more time together because our time has kind of been robbed from being in different places, right? Since we knew each other before that, you know what I mean, right? Where it
Mhm.
was more like, oh, let's just meet up at, this at homecoming at this school, and are y'all gonna go to the after the the party at this person's house, and this, that, and the other, to, oh well, maybe we'll see each other during winter break, maybe. Oh, you're gonna be out of town, oh never mind, you know to, okay, now we all have the time. And then the layer of people who are like, I just moved to your city, come show me around. I need to know what to do. I need to know what a club. I need to know where to eat. I need to know where to drink. I need to know where to get my eyebrows arched. I need to
Right,
know where to get
right.
my face clean. Like, I need a barber. Like, oh my God. So that was very, like, situationally initially very overwhelming to me just in thinking. It didn't necessarily work out that way in practice, but I do think that having a network of people who weren't necessarily tied together did force me to go into different places, to where I met different people. And even if they're not necessarily my friends, they're acquaintances. They're just familiar faces that I know now. You know what I mean? Um, so like, socially, right? Like it doesn't feel like everywhere I go, I'm always alone, right? Sometimes I've gone places and just seen somebody I met through somebody else and been like, oh, you're here. And then that turns into, you finally don't feel the awkwardness of being the only one at the event. You know what I'm saying? Y'all not talking back to me. Am I here by myself?
No, you're on the call by yourself. I was just kind of
wow.
reflecting when you were talking about kind of having the same mental state as people around you. We're all in final season. We're all in like an anxiety state. We're like, oh, hey, we're all tired after, the day of classes that we had or events that we had at school. Um, at least you'd know that the people around you kind of were in that same physical, mental space where you guys could, I guess, be with each other in different event spaces that you can kind of have that camaraderie over whatever is going on in life. But coming out into the corporate space, I think something that's so underappreciated is having those breaks throughout the day where you're going from a few classes here and there on whatever day of the
Uh,
week to an 8-hour schedule straight out
it,
and being so exhausted by
it
the end of
goes
the day.
It goes back, Brittany, it's so funny. That leads back to what I used to always say in college, where I think I used to tell y'all this all the time. Once you go to college, you look back to high school and your entire previous high school career, and you're
Yes.
like, how the heck did we
How did
make
you
it
do
through
that?
eight
How did we do
hour
that?
days?
Yeah.
And so you get a little taste of that freedom in college, and then you turn around and most people have a 40-hour work week. It's
Yeah.
like, here I go again. I'm just in a suit now versus a uniform or clothes for school back in like elementary school. And it's just like,
Yeah.
what makes it even worse is I just feel like you just sometimes you don't even get that time off because like it's one of those things where like if there's a work culture, I'll be the one to say this. At my company, we get, of course, we get our legally required lunch breaks and stuff. But when you have a work culture where everybody works through their lunch, sometimes I'm just like, I'm not leaving my desk. I'm working through my lunch to get off work early. Like it's like
Right.
one disadvantage to benefit yourself. Where truthfully, I need to take the time to. I'm one of those people. I have a tendency where I can sit down for 8 hours and not eat anything. I might grab a snack or candy, but I'll do that to myself because I'm like, well, I don't need to take my hour lunch because if I don't take my hour lunch, I could get off work early. And that's not helpful for anybody. And it just becomes the cycle of you feeling like you have to sacrifice things that you need to benefit yourself in the long run. It just is frustrating.
And then kind of wrapping it back around, it's like, how do I have these conversations with people that are so far out of my age range, or just like mindset, comfortability to like talk in certain ways, right? It's like, hey, like, yeah, I'm exhausted from this work day, but like, who do I share that with? My manager? Like, you
Yeah.
can't, you
Yeah.
can't have that moment throughout the day, like where I'm just coming out of lab and I'm like, yeah, I really hated that class today. Um,
And that
yeah,
just, I think that kind of going with that direction, it just, sometimes it's just like being in a workplace where you're pretty much the only young professional. There's a
hmm
lot of innovation to that on the level of like, you're like, oh, you really feel this level of like, oh, I'm in like an adult, I'm in a big kid job. Like, I have all these older adults where like, if I don't do my job, or like people are relying on me basically to get my job done so they can do stuff. And it's like, on one angle, it's that feeling of like, yes, I'm really an adult,
I
but
made
that,
it.
yeah, I made it. But without that presence of other young professionals, it could feel really ostracizing, where you're just kind of like, oh, I really, there really isn't nobody. Kind of like I alluded to in our episode intro, when your coworkers are in their 30s and 40s, and don't get me wrong, I have some really great work buddies I've made over the
Exactly.
years who
Same.
were, 40-year-olds, 50-year-olds, and 60-year-olds even,
Yeah.
who were like my work bestie. But sometimes it's frustrating when you don't have anybody to kind of really, not necessarily become friends, because that's a whole nother topic of, do you truly have work friends, or just your proximity, again, us talking about proximity, your proximity around someone just requires you to form a relationship with them in some way. But like, it sometimes could be really frustrating not to have an outlet or a community of people to be like, man, this is wild. Like, sometimes you have, imposter syndrome and all that comes with
Exactly.
it. But
Yep.
it's, being a young professional is hard. And to your point, Brittany, it's really hard to have that outlet of, oh, am I going to tell my manager about this? Because I
Right.
don't think they're going to be too helpful or be able to relate to this.
Yeah, I think that's also kind of something that maybe also speaks to the generationality of when people came into the workforce too, because I feel like pre-COVID, post-COVID, very different cultural wise, like how you think about either scheduling and making sure everyone's okay and kind of team camaraderie in that way. I think we've had to think about things a little bit differently than some people that have been in the workforce for, 10, 15 years at this point.
Well, Brittany, to your point about kind of, or kind of this whole point we've been on of kind of working with intergeneration, no, like employees, and having these different crossing age groups. I think a question that I wanted to ask that kind of relates to our topic today is, we just basically got done talking about how once you leave college, it can feel very kind of confusing, or getting used to your work life. And I'm curious for you guys, have y'all either attempted or have y'all thought about what specifically, I'm thinking more so in the context of work, forming relationships more so towards like mentorships? Have you guys found a mentor in your respective field or at your job that kind of is a way for you to not necessarily have that friendship that we talk about? Because to me,
Mhm.
friendships and mentorship aren't the same type of relationship,
Right. Yeah.
but as an outlet to kind of fill in that void of having maybe not as many reliable friends to pick up the phone and talk to, but creating that mentorship. Have you guys found that, or begun looking for one? And how has that helped you in the sense of being a young professional and tackling this new unexpected reality of working at a job?
Well, I can go first. My job has a quote unquote buddy system. That's their words,
Mm.
not mine. I would never say that at my big age.
It's giving elementary school.
Right.
Buddy.
But like basically where we're matched up with someone who is more senior at the organization. I believe my buddy's been there 3 years, so really not that much senior, but whatever. Um, and it's not that is not a good example, right, of mentorship, because well, one, we're building a relationship, so this may change.
Mhm.
But she works on another side of the business entirely, right? Like I work on the business side of the organization. She is um working on the more programmatic side of what we do. So we don't interface a lot because the way that her job works, she doesn't interface with my team necessarily, um, or me specifically, right? And so that helps in terms of like if I hated my coworkers one week, I could vent to her about it. Um, but I'm not getting mentor from her. You know what I mean? So I have to cultivate a stable of mentorship to people who can understand my experience, right? Have been in my shoes and are in the same field, or at least the same, not necessarily the same field, but maybe the same like segment of the field, right? The same kind of business
Mhm.
unit, the same kind of do the same kind of work at a different level. Um, and I do think that that can turn into some level of friendship. Like this is where friendship gets into the murky waters with language, because I do think that needs, again, like work needs to be aligned. Um, but I think that at the very least, right, it's kind of like those checking in friendships, except the person's older, not someone you
Right.
knew through like a common period of time in life.
Yeah, I guess for me, I'm blessed in a lot of facets. One, my company kind of has this uh, Yo Pro is what we call it, Young Professionals Women's Program for mentorship. So when you're kind of um, hired on, they put you in these sessions with different people across the company. So like sometimes you'll get people that are in the space that you're in. Sometimes you'll get people that are not. But they kind of host these sessions about things that they found really difficult, like as a woman in a tech space, coming into the company, things that they wish they thought about when they were a young professional themselves. So they kind of give us advice on how to handle different situations, how to advocate for yourself, stuff like that. So I'm really blessed that my company has that mentorship program in place already, that I didn't have to kind of build that from scratch, and find it myself. I am also a part of one of the biggest sororities nationally for Black people, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. But those women kind of found me as well when I joined the company. So I kind of have that mentorship as well from people that are, 1 year my senior to people that are 20 years my senior in the company. They take care of me because we already have that shared community. So yeah, I think for me the mentorship kind of came naturally, but I know not everyone is kind of blessed in the same way. So I'm interested to hear kind of your perspective on it too, Priscilla.
Yeah, I think on the angle of my employment, we don't have too many, I would say, we don't have a defined young professional group. I will say what helps me out a lot is I'm on a really small team where my manager and my big boss, as I call them, the person above my boss, is really invested in making sure that we feel, involved and feel engaged with the work we do. So we regularly have check-in. It's not really established by my company, but I've been able to find that space. And I think I would really encourage our listeners who are either in a space where they don't have a company that has those places in those policies in place, or organizations. Most likely, they're usually organizations or like ERGs at your company. There's a lot of great organizations depending on where you live. Like I'm thinking, like first thing that comes to my mind is like Urban League and stuff like that, where there's a lot of, do a little research in your community, because I feel like in Memphis, because that's just what I'm used to, because that was where I was at for so long. They had plenty of young professional groups where they would host socials every week for, if you want to do something fun after work, and form those networks, if you will, because I feel like we're at this stage where my mindset right now, isn't, oh, I need to find some more friends. It's kind of the mindset of I would really like to meet other people, to network with them and see what places they work at, what roles they like. Is there like, that's my kind of mentality right now. And so, some of our listeners might be in the mindset where they're like, I've lost my whole friend circle. Like we just don't talk and I need to start over afresh.
Right.
There's usually a lot of great programs if you do a little bit of research that, especially in huge urban cities, urban centers, wherever you're at, that they usually always have like a young professional group or something in place. Just, you have to do a little research and find out what activities and stuff and who's hosting.
Yeah, and if you do have great relationship with your boss or your boss's boss in Priscilla's case, because I don't know who that person is, but I'm on their side. But if you have good relationships with those people, don't be afraid to ask, like, hey, what's something that you would suggest me joining? Or, even just like for professional development, what is something that
Yeah.
you would think would benefit me in this new space? Just asking people who have already been there before you what
Yeah,
you think is best.
that's so true, Brittany, and that's a great point because a lot of times, based off what your boss might say, a lot of times your organization might cover your admission fee or your membership fees for that organization if it proves to be wow. If it
Sorry,
proves
sorry,
to be, if it proves to be impactful for your career. So,
Yeah.
there's a lot of young professional groups out there. I'm kind of bummed because I didn't really get to do. My advice: if you're still in college right now, find young professional groups right now and at least sign up for them because the difference between having student fees for a young professional group,
Yeah,
I,
alumni level, they treat you like an adult as soon as you
yeah,
graduate.
as soon as you
Especially in
graduate.
terms of money, they don't care.
Yeah, so my piece of advice before you graduate, while you still got really even after you graduate, as long as you still got that student email active, depending on how your institution does it, go ahead and just sign up with membership with a couple of young professional, or not even young professional organizations, but professional organizations, because they're a really great opportunity for you to connect with people, especially I would say every sector basically has a young professional group, no matter what you want to go into. So do a little research on that because student fees are a lot cheaper than after you graduate and become an adult and have to pay yearly.
Well, okay, so this well, we're kind of running high on time, but
Mhm.
I think to kind of ground us back in the topic of the episode, and this is a great conversation, don't get me wrong, but I guess want to talk about another set of friends, and that is the check-in friends. And I don't mean your close friends who you call to check in every couple of days, right? Every week, right? I mean the people that you talk to once a month, probably over text, once a
Mhm.
quarter, once a year. Um, right, like, and how do those friendships count as friendships, right? Is that like the sign of a friendship that's actually going through some level of maintenance, or is that more so like people still trying to cling on to modes of familiarity, or people who are familiar to them? I didn't need to use that big of a word, but um, people who are familiar to them, right? Yeah, I'll leave that for interpretation.
I guess, well, I did want to pose the question, are you talking about coming out of college, like when those
Yes,
friendships start turning into those things?
yes.
Okay.
I don't mean people that you met at, I don't know, Young Black. Oh, I was about to cuss. Young Black People of America.
Wow.
Uh,
Wow. Because I knew exactly what you were about to say. And we were
uh,
definitely going to have to run that back.
sorry. Woo, let's just start over. Hold on.
No, keep it in.
Yeah, we're keeping that in. That one's I'll start off because I feel like I'm the type of person. I kind of classify these people as the types that, thanks to social media, when I see them doing well, I'd be like, "Hey, yo, congrats, man!" Or I'm
Yeah.
one of those people that be like, "Yo, I haven't talked to you in a while, man. I hope things are well, but this looks awesome." I'm one of those people that I I kind of respect the silence. I know everyone has different avenues. I don't think about, obviously it's a little bit different with my closer friends, that if I stop hearing from Jahari for 2 weeks, I kind of am respecting his time and space. So I'm also like, you good? You need anything?
Right. Yeah.
I'm one of those people that I kind of, if I don't hear from somebody a long time, especially to the level of friends that Jari's talking about, I just kind of respect their hustle. Now those type of people that reach out to me out the blue and I'm like, okay, what is this about? Like, this is kind of scary. What you reaching out for me for? But I'm one of those people that it just comes naturally to me. Like I think once people go off to do their own things, I'm just like, hey, we're all adults here. You're going off to do your own thing. You know, awesome. You do that. You do great things. But I think there is a point that some people might feel insecure about that, especially if those people that you were close with before turns into one of your those friends, and you're like, oh, okay, I'm not used to this. I'm used to talking to this person every day versus,
Yeah.
not hearing them from regularly. So my answer is, I just go with it. I vibe with it. I'm the type where I'm like, hey, just checking in. I want to make sure you're all right, but I'm also going to respect your, grind mentality, or if you got a lot of stuff going on, because hey, it gets crazy adulting. So that's kind of my response.
Yeah, I think this question is kind of interesting for me, I think, because kind of that situation that you were talking about at the end there, Priscilla, where some of your close friends will turn into, you're texting, once a week, and then all of a sudden you're texting once a month, and then, once every half year. That kind of happened to me with a few of my friends coming out of college, and I think I was just trying to collect my thoughts like while you were talking. But I think for me, uh, kind of coming away from that sustained proximity, you learn which friendships or which relationships you built that are actually close, long lasting friendships compared to people who were kind of a convenience because of that proximity to each other, right? I think you also can learn in that transition, like what you value um, differently about people, about relationships that you are holding. And I think that is a difficult conversation to have, but or just recognition to have when you're coming out of these spaces. But it is something that happens to some people, and yeah, definitely important to recognize.
Well, I guess y'all are kind of nice.
Oh no, I'm scared.
I mean, I just feel like, you know, I'm not
Yeah.
a big business teller in general, like my own business. Um, so I mean,
Take your time. Take your time.
okay,
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
uh, I I just feel that there comes a time when the people who you talk to once in a blue moon to check in, where we go backwards. You know what I mean? Like from friend to acquaintance. I feel that an overabundance of quote unquote check in friendships is not healthy. Done. I'm done. That's it.
And that's okay. I think, yeah, just wrapping it back to the topic of today. Sometimes once you're away from literally walkable friendships, as I like to call them, like your dorm is literally next to mine.
When did that happen for you?
Not dorm room. I'm just saying dorms in
Wow.
general.
I was gonna say, how many people were you living next to all the way over on the north side of campus?
No, no. I just mean everyone was within, like, 15-minute walking distance, okay? I didn't have to take a car to go visit my
Woo,
friends.
15 minutes. Yeah, you were far.
Please. But my point is, it you will have to have a transition period where you're figuring out how to, I guess, navigate your friendships that you had when you were within 15 minutes of each other to where you're on different ends of the earth. So don't be surprised if that uh, either comes roughly or easy to you, but just know that it might happen. Yeah, but I guess thanks for joining us on this episode, you guys. Hopefully you got something valuable out of the conversation we had today, and we'll see you next week.
All right.
Next two
See you.
weeks. I always say next week.
I was just about to say, see you in the next 2 weeks, everybody.
All right.
Yeah.
This ain't Texas.